Morning, guys.
Good morning to you.
Sorry about the echo. Yeah, so the meeting will start at 9 as already communicated. The meeting is going to be chaired by UMI. So I'll be linking you up to the connection. The meeting is starting at 9. In the meantime, we can allow others join. Others, you're welcome. Maybe a few clarification. Um, I'm your host today, Marvin Keith Mutebi. So as the meeting goes on, for those who have anything they want to submit, today we shall be using the chat section. We may not get a chance to speak in live because the meetings are in different places and the connection may be a little harder today. But we can put all those submissions in the chat section and they will be addressed as the meeting goes on. Thank you.
Customer so se kola homework but not again. My G, my G, my G. Yeah.
Wait, stop. What? What are you doing now for come?
So I just
This is one picture.
what are you 16 hours riding down?
Members, the meeting is going to start. But for those ones who have background noises, I'm going to be ejecting most of you because we're having a problem with the background noises. So be sure that if you have background noises, you'll be removed. So we're going to join in the meeting.
Has been at the steering for this dialogue. She has sacrificed a lot of time and a lot of energy in making sure that the dialogue takes place, more specifically during these very difficult times. As the Management Development Institute, we expect that a lot of information will come out of this dialogue, and we shall use it in two ways. One, to produce the policy briefs, but most importantly also to capture most of the issues that we discuss into our case studies that we use during the training, and also to disseminate the knowledge that would have been presented in this forum to the wider community. Lastly, allow me to thank in a very special way our chief presenter who has sacrificed time to write this paper, and also the moderator, and also the person who is going to critique the paper. Time invested into making sure that this paper comes out and we discuss it. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Allow me to wish everybody good deliberations and also fruitful discussions. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you, Mr. James Nkata.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director General, for those remarks and for welcoming the participants on this dialogue. Now, at this juncture, we would like to welcome the chief guest, that the Minister of State for Gender, Labor and Social Development. And as the Director General has mentioned, we would like to, on behalf of all the participants, to join him to congratulate her on the appointment to that important ministry. And therefore, we wouldn't get any better person to be a chief guest and also to open this dialogue other than the Minister of State for Gender, Honorable Peace Mutuzo. So yes, at this moment, we have the next 20 minutes where we are going to listen to the chief guest as she gives her opening remarks. Honorable Minister, you are welcome. But you said she had logged in.
The personal assistant.
So who is giving you the remarks?
She's going to find us on the way we can continue.
So should we start on the presentation?
Yes, now, and then she will find us on the way.
Okay, after the consultation, I understand that the chief guest is not ready yet. I think in that way we can proceed to the paper will give us the remarks as we progress. Otherwise, we cannot wait. So I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our presenter, Ms. Lydia Namuri. Ms. Lydia Namuri is the manager of Legal Aid Clinic and Law Development Center, is a member of FIDA, is outgoing chairperson of FIDA Board of Directors, and is the member of Uganda Law Society and East African Law Society. So you can understand that our presenter this morning is a person who has been at that level and who has interacted with various issues to do with the policy, gender, and rights. And as you've heard recently, the new cabinet, somebody mentioned that 45% of the members are females, and that is 45% is a good percentage, and that means that gender is being given a recognition and a responsibility. It is not only rights, but also responsibility to carry out various roles in this society. So as we get to look at the policies on gender promotion and rights, we should be at the back of our mind thinking about responsibility as well. But that is something which is going to be clarified to us by the presenter. And without taking much time, let me invite Ms. Namuri to deliver her paper. Ms. Namuri, you are welcome to Uganda Management Institute and this particular hour of May 24, June 2021. You are welcome.
Thank you, our moderator. I think I'm already introduced, and I'm glad that you gave me an opportunity to present on such a topic that is so pertinent to me. And I'm glad that you make mention of the fact that this is a conversation that we are going to continue via various policy briefs, because it's incapable of discussion in 2 hours. Sincerely, we cannot give it the justice it deserves. There is a lot when we talk about gender equality and promotion of gender equality, because gender is at the core of our daily lives. So I'm glad that we are looking at an opportunity where we shall be able to have policy briefs and to continue the conversation on gender. Maybe before we start, I had a conversation with organizers that we couldn't be doing the topic justice if we just spoke about the legal framework, the policy framework. And I made mention that we need to carry the policy together with the legal framework, which go hand in hand. And that was a twitch that we added onto the presentation, but was never reflected on the flyer. So you'll find that I'm going to talk about the legal aspects and then the policy framework as well, which ideally go hand in hand. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. So thank you, our moderator, and all protocol observed. I wish to get started, and I'll begin by making mention that gender plays a very critical role in defining the world order, and it is our basic definition of humanity and human relations. That's where we start. With at the moment you're born, it's either you are a man or woman, and that's how we begin our human race. So much as people tend to make all these issues very trivial and sometimes refer to them as women issues, it is at the core of the world order that we should keep at the back of our mind. And many may be atheists, but we know that the story of creation began with man, and then later on we had the woman who, and that is the Adam and Eve story. So it is at the core of the very being of human beings and the world order. We need to take note that even right from that moment, we see that Adam and Eve were created differently, but with complementary roles and obligations. And in no way was there meant to be a superior or inferior race, but it was a complementary relationship without necessarily saying who is here to who. And we have to note that when we talk about gender equality, it's not only a fundamental human right, but it is necessary for inclusive and sustainable development. We cannot say that we can attain development without addressing the issue of gender equality. Before we start this conversation, let us look at a very basic definition of gender. And from the social context, we refer to gender as the meaning and roles assigned to either a woman or a man or a woman or a male or female. Many times when we mention gender, the first thing that people think about is, oh my goodness, these are women issues. But I think people should deconstruct their mind from that. When we talk about gender, we are encompassing both male and female, and it should never be construed to be only a women issue. And when we come down to our society, we further define gender because gender is really the way we are assigned roles and responsibilities in a particular society. So from the moment you are born, there is a way the society will mold you with responsibilities and roles, which defines our entire being on planet Earth. I must apologize. I'm working from home. I'm unable to move, as you know, the lockdown, so we may get some interferences. The room is not soundproof. So when we talk about gender equality, we are talking about a situation where all people have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities. And this, we are talking about the male and female. That is what is referred to as gender equality. It's a situation where all people, male, female, have equal rights, equal responsibilities, and equal opportunities. And gender equality doesn't mean that men or women become the same, but that women and men have equal rights, responsibilities, and opportunities, and that what is available to you in terms of rights and responsibilities or opportunities will not depend on the fact whether you're born as men, as male or female. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier, the complementary roles and responsibilities instead of the superiority as opposed to the inferiority, the superiority or inferiority discussion. So it is about the complementary role, and gender equality implies that interests, needs, and priorities of both men and women are taken into consideration, and therefore also recognizing the diversity that there is in both the gender of male and female. I wish to also talk about gender inequality that has now led us to have the conversation on gender equality. And basically, gender inequality is the unfair right between male and female based on the different gender roles, which leads to unequal treatment in life. So I need to make mention of the fact that the conversation on gender is relevant, and it has therefore found room in the legal and policy framework because there is a justification to it and there is a rationale to it. And we can justify this from the fact that we need to cure the historical imbalance based on the discrimination and the inhuman and degrading treatment that is rooted in the world's history, as we shall see from the international instruments. We also need to make note of the fact that when we talk about gender equality, it is necessary for inclusive growth and sustainable development to ensure that nobody is left behind. At the national level here, Uganda, we have the advantage of the fact that it helps us fulfill our pledges that we have made in terms of implementing the international, regional frameworks, but also our own national frameworks and laws. It is important to note that gender equality is important in observation of the rule of law, and it's good for the democratic principles that include equitable access to justice. And that way we can look forward to inclusive development. To start off this, I must say that although gender is conceived as a natural attribute, it has a legal perspective and dimension, as we shall see the frameworks at the international, regional, and national level. So it's not only biblical that God made man and God made woman, it also has the element of the legal perspective to it. And the legal perspective, as you see, is just coming in to cure the historical injustices, the historical imbalances, and therefore leading to sustainable development. I must say that the debate on gender is quite a controversial one, and each time it's spoken about, we see wars. We see a war between men and female, and many times when we talk about gender, we see the male coming up to think the women are about to take over, or they're about to undermine the authority, or they're about to take away what belongs to them. So we should not, although as I mentioned earlier, it is something that encompasses the two sexes, that is male and female, and it should never be construed to be a similar gender. But even as I start off this, because I know the conversation is going to ignite heated debate, I must say that the discussion remains controversial. And in terms of the legal framework, we shall look at the human rights perspective, the constitutional perspective, but also the gender perspective within the civil and criminal laws. Because when we come from the international and regional framework, then we come down to our own. And that's what we embrace under the constitutional order. That's where it all starts before we can have it within the main legal framework in terms of the laws passed by Parliament. So to mention or to start off, we have to acknowledge the provisions of the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, which is a living document that ushered in the human rights-based approach. And we see this providing for equality of all human beings. This is where we are starting from, talking about the equality of all human beings in dignity and in rights. And therefore, as such, there is a guarantee of rights and freedom irrespective of who you are, whether male or female, and therefore a call for non-discrimination. But very of critical importance to note is that the declaration talks about equality before the law and equal protection of the law. That means that that is a call for the law to protect both male and female on an equal basis. and that will be very significant for the rest of the conversation that we shall have. But even for the subsequent international instruments that came through, providing for civil and political rights, we see the re-echo of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights when they talk about equality before the law and the equal protection of the law without discrimination. That's where we're coming from. And then we see a further provision relating to equality before the courts and tribunals. That's also very, very important. So we are sort of creating a movement from just paper to now access. Sorry, the host muted me. Is there a problem? Hello?
Please continue.
We can hear you.
Okay, I can continue. Thank you.
And kindly, if you can slideshow.
Sorry, you can't see my screen?
It is a bit smaller. If you can slideshow.
Okay.
It will be.
Presenter would like to have the minister make a presentation and then she leaves. So kindly give her a chance. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Professor Mande, please introduce the minister. Thank you.
Hello. Presenter, kindly stop slideshow. Okay, thank you.
Professor Mande, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I would like to take this opportunity once again to welcome the minister and congratulate her on her appointment to the ministry, which is a very important ministry, where the issue of gender, labor, and social development are handled. And this morning we have this dialogue, which is talking at the policy framework for promotion of gender equality and rights in this country. And Honorable Minister, we have Ms. Lydia Namuri, an advocate and a person who has served in various capacities to present on that topic. But we would like to welcome you to make some opening remarks so that all the participants can get into this debate of policy and gender equality and rights. Honorable Minister, you are welcome to make your remarks. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. You can go ahead and present.
Thank you, Professor Wilson Minda. I want to know whether I'm being heard now. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yes.
I found the presenter already making her remarks. And since I am also a researcher, I really wouldn't mind letting her finish. And I will make my opening remarks right after she has finished. I don't know how that feels.
Okay.
But I would have wanted to
it is okay.
Presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. We can now shift back to the presenter to continue with her remarks.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Namuri.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were at the point of talking about the subsequent instruments that followed the Universal Declaration that still speak to the issue of equality and equality under and before the law and under the law without discrimination to race, but also that equality moves on to courts and tribunals at the point of actualization. And further guarantee of equal rights for women and men in civil and political rights. Sorry, there is some interference there. We also have a provision for equality of rights and non-discrimination along the economic, social, and cultural rights, and the International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights makes a provision to guarantee all rights of individuals culturally, socially, and economically without discrimination to race. I wish to give more time to the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Why? Because it starts off by illustrating the history of gender inequity and discrimination, and therefore calling for a cure. This pseudo, if I could abbreviate, makes a note of the fact that despite the several international instruments that have been passed at the international level, the discrimination and inequity continues, and it calls for the need to cure these inequalities, to ensure that women are allowed a platform to participate equally in all spheres of life. And why I'm giving the pseudo particular attention is because many times when affirmative action is taken for the female gender, the male gender gets agitated, and they even speak of now becoming the marginalized race. But all said, I think the pseudo sort of speaks to the issue of the historical inequalities and discrimination that has come through over the years, even with the passing of international instruments, and therefore calling for a strengthening in the interventions that we must undertake to be very intentional about what we do to empower the race that has been discriminated upon and therefore left behind. And it therefore calls upon state parties to establish legal protection of rights of women on an equal basis with men. It calls upon state parties to ensure that women's rights are protected and women are protected from discrimination through our national tribunals and other public institutions. And it calls upon women being accorded equal treatment with men before the law. It calls upon women, it calls upon state parties to ensure that women are accorded, that women in civil matters, that women are accorded audience before courts of land tribunals, and that all necessary measures are taken, including through legislation, to ensure that women are uplifted and that those who perpetuate violence against women are punished. So it is from that perspective, not that the world order wants to safeguard the women, but on a history of a long-term discrimination through customs, cultures, and laws that have led to gender imbalance or gender inequity that must therefore be addressed to bring our practices, our systems within the international human rights framework. We further have the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and all this is coming in to see how a woman's rights is further protected
following all the passing of international instruments, and then we continue to see gaps and pitfalls. There is further call in the declarations that follow, including the Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it calls for state parties to train, sensitize law enforcement agencies, public officials responsible for implementing policies in regard to violence against women. It calls for state parties to develop penal, civil, labor, and administrative sanctions in our domestic legislation to ensure that justice for women who face violence, either in public or private sphere, is assured. So the latter declaration speaks to the continued violation against women's rights. And I need to inform the people who are sometimes agitated about the gender discussion to know this history. It's about the continued evidence that comes through despite the very beautiful instruments. And we see also further calls through the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which calls on state parties to, which obliges states to provide women subjected to violence access to mechanisms to access justice. So we see now a call for justice beyond what we see on paper. We see a call for review of our national laws to ensure that we eliminate all the harmful customary laws and practices that affect women in the circle of family, but also commercially, and bring it in line with international instruments, but also to revoke any laws that lead to gender imbalance in the administration of justice. Even at the regional level, we have quite a number of instruments that speak to gender equality, and the first being the African Charter on Human and People's Rights that speaks to, provides for a number of universally accepted rights along gender, which include political, civil, social, economic, and culture. And then we see the protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, commonly known as the Maputo Protocol, providing for access to justice and equal protection of the law for both men and women. And it was also a move to strengthen the protection of women's rights. Sorry, something's running there. We saw a declaration on gender equality in Africa, and it's also providing for promoting gender equality and women empowerment, and it calls for mainstreaming at the highest political level for all African countries to abide with. Mainstreaming, as you will see, is one of the issues that Uganda is at, of course, with several challenges. We see the African Union Agenda, which provides for the promotion and protection of women's rights and for equal treatment of women and women before the law. It guarantees strict observance of the principle of gender equality, which guarantees fairness and equal treatment for all. It calls for the promotion of good governance and the rule of law to ensure human rights and women's rights are promoted through democratic and transparent institutions. So these are sort of setting the standards, but we also have to look at the treaty for the establishment of the
community. One of its objectives is to ensure gender mainstreaming, and it calls upon states to enhance the role of women in political, social, cultural, technological, and economic development, and calls upon the state parties
to eliminate prejudice against women and promote equality of the female gender with that of men in every aspect of life. Important to note is that Uganda has made very positive steps to ensure that it incorporates most of the provisions of the international instruments and regional instruments on gender equality in the Constitution. Uganda has a very beautiful Constitution, and This is to mirror the national objectives of the Constitution. Objective 6 obliges the state to ensure gender balance and fair representation of marginalized groups in all constitutional bodies and other bodies. This is quite powerful, and it is something that has been a subject of conversation and a subject of action for a very long time. The gender balance and fair representation of the marginalized on all constitutional and other bodies. It is a point for reflection, and which I think the discussants will want to talk about in depth, because we have had a very turbulent ladder. At one point, we're doing very well, and then sometimes other sentiments take control. So it's something that we have to mirror on and reflect on. And I'm glad that we have the Minister of Gender in this. As a legal practitioner concerned with gender relations, each time things do not happen on the constitutional bodies and other bodies, I get we are about to lose out on some of the provisions of our constitution. Objective 5 makes provision for, provides for adequate resources for the protection and promotion of human rights, and further guarantee and respect the independence of non-government organizations which protect and promote human rights. And I guess we see this happen in many respects. We have seen non-government organizations mushroom from the moment, even before, but much more after the Constitution, to protect human rights. And we have seen non-government organizations work hand in hand with government, playing a complementary role to see how human rights are promoted, including along the line of gender. Although it also has its own pitfalls, as the discussant will mention, because of restrictions coming up recently. In more detail, the Constitution under Article 21 provides for equality of all persons before and under the law in all spheres of political, economic, social, cultural life, and in every respect. And it calls for the enjoyment of equal protection of the law. That is quite powerful, listeners. That is quite powerful. That is a strong basis for gender equality, because there is a call for equality of all persons before and under the law and in all spheres of life, and for equal protection of the law. And for the policy makers, I know there are some members of parliament listening in here. This is something that we should be looking at. Do we all enjoy equal protection under the law? Are we all equal in all spheres of life? In the political sphere and other spheres of life? Fight for non-discrimination on several grounds, including on the ground of sex. And that is what now brings in the aspect of gender equality. We see the Constitution calling Parliament to enact laws that will facilitate the implementation of policies and programs that address the various imbalances in society. And this also applies to the element of the gender inequalities. So Parliament is empowered to ensure that the laws that are enacted address the various imbalances in our society. Article 32 specifically provides for affirmative action for all marginalized groups, including on the basis of gender. So that is a very strong ground for the promotion of gender equality. And specifically, Article 31 provides for rights of women who are also entitled to full and equal dignity of the person with a man, with men. And this, in essence, is trying to mirror out the voice of pseudo, because pseudo specifically speaks to the historical imbalances that have been we've experienced over the period, over the long period of time. Nationally is a bonus because it is a move to implement the provisions of the international instrument. And I must say that this makes us shine as a country. Article 34 makes provision for rights of women to equal treatment with men, including equal opportunities in all political, economic, and social activities. And to me, I must say that these provisions are very beautiful because they properly capture the provisions of the international and regional instruments. And the ball now stays in our hands. How are we using these very beautiful provisions? The discussants will tell us more about that. Article 33.5, women have a right to affirmative action for the purposes of addressing the imbalances created by history, tradition, and custom. And I always tell people who get agitated by affirmative action that this is where we're coming from. It's undeniable that there has been some historical imbalances in our history, in our traditions, in our customs. That's not only in Uganda, but that's world over. And these are the provisions of the Constitution are a good move to address those imbalances. Article 50 provides for the enforcement of rights and freedoms. Many times it's important that the rights and freedoms do not remain on paper. There should be an actualization platform which our Constitution has ably provided for. And it calls upon any person who claims that a fundamental right of freedom has been infringed upon, they're entitled to apply to a competent court for redress, and they may actually get compensation. And it actually makes provision of any person bringing an action on behalf of another person who is violated. So all that is very, very important for the actualization of gender equality. Should there be an imbalance, should somebody be agitated, they are entitled to bring their case before court, and they can seek compensation. But also, it makes provision for activists to come in and seek protection of the law under the courts of judicature. The Constitution further makes provision for the composition of parliament and provides for one woman representative per district. And we see this is already happening. I know there are challenges related to this that the discussant of this paper will speak to. And sorry, the tab is covering. I don't know if there is an IT person who can just help me, because the tab is covering what I must speak about. But okay, having spoken about, I can't see my heading. The Zoom tab is covering my heading, but let me see if I can escape to be able to see my heading. Nonetheless, let's proceed. We need to understand the law and how the law works. When we talk about the law, we are talking about, sorry, it covers my headings and I'm unable to access my headings. I was saying that we need to understand the law and how the law works. I have mentioned that the law is a set of rules, regulations made by government to govern society and maintain law and order. It sets out rights and responsibilities. It provides for solutions to harm done. It controls behavior by regulating what one can do and what one cannot do. And it's shaped by the beliefs of our society and varies from society to society. That is the law for you. And that is the law under which we are operating, even in Uganda. And I think what is left for us is the conversation to align our laws to what is acceptable under the human rights standards. Because as we shall see, most of our laws may not necessarily be aligned to the human rights standards as regards gender equality. The law serves the purpose of enabling us to live in an orderly environment. It guides our human conduct and professional ethics. It provides relief for those who are hurt. Generally, it manages our order in society and it addresses our grievances, conflicts. But most of all, it applies equally to all of us. When the law is passed, it applies equally to all of us. And therefore, that's why we have to be very important on what sort of laws do we pass. Now we are speaking about laws governing gender equality. And if we say the law applies to all of us, we have to be very, very careful on the laws that we bring through our parliament, because they're for all of us. They govern us, our daily relations, and they govern us equally. So we have to be very careful. We can broadly discuss law in two categories, the civil and criminal. And we see the gender equality mirroring in these two aspects of laws. While civil laws regulate relationships and rights between individuals, and somebody can proceed under this law for a wrong, claiming for a compensation on an award. On the other hand, criminal law prohibits people from doing acts that are considered to be harmful to our society. And even the gender equality is regulated along these two areas of the law. And if at all I could speak directly to gender equality, I could start with family law and looking at family law as a ground of gender equality. The Constitution of Uganda provides for rights of men and women of age 18 to marry and find a family. And it provides that this must be on an equal basis at contracting the marriage, during and at dissolution. And if at all we could look further at the marriage laws for assessment of gender equality, we see that we have, and here I'll look at the marriage laws that are commonly used in Uganda. We have the Marriage Act, and this governs the church and civil marriages, and it provides for one man, one wife, and we see gender balance there. When we go to the Customary Marriages Registration Act, this is a marriage, an act that regulates the marriage under customary law. We see that one man can marry several wives, and this speaks to gender equality, and it may not mirror well with the principle of equality as envisaged in the Constitution, same as the Marriage and Divorce of Muhammadans Act, which provides for a man who may take on up to 4 wives. This is still a gender imbalance. And of course, there are so many sentiments attached to this, customarily, in culture, but also under religion. So these are very hardcore statements that sometimes undermine the Constitution and make it difficult to further gender equality. And, you know, they're within our society. This is our society that shapes us, and every one of us belongs there. So they're hard to have a conversation about, as I've mentioned, because of cultural sentiments, but also because of religious sentiments. But if you look at them critically, they have a connotation on the gender inequity, and somehow they may not reflect the spirit of the Constitution. Further, if we look at the Divorce Act, we see that the Divorce Act provides for different grounds for divorce for men and women, where a man has to provide to prove one ground, which is adultery, while the wife has to prove adultery on another. We see courts being proactive in relation to this under the case of FIDA Uganda and 5 others versus Attorney General, where they outlawed Section 4 of the Divorce Act as being unconstitutional in as far as the right to equality is concerned. And we love that and we applaud what courts have done, but we have not had an amendment of the Divorce Act. And this conversation can go on and on, but we have never had that amendment of the Divorce Act, although in practice we have gone by the pronouncements of the Constitutional Court. But we would like to see more activism when it comes to law amendments, and I'm happy that we have members of parliament here. Let us look at Section 154 of the Penal Code, and this is a criminal law, although now regulating a family relation, when it criminalizes the adulterous acts of a woman who gets cautioned in the beginning, but is also subject to imprisonment should this occur. And no similar charges are brought against a man unless he's committing adultery with a married woman. This position has been dealt with by the Constitutional Court under the Law Advocacy for Women in Uganda versus the Attorney General of Uganda. And it outlawed this section of the Penal Code, but as I've mentioned, we do not see a similar arrangement to amend the law. And I'll still hand over this to the lawmakers. We have a problem there that we should be attending to. Further, if we could talk about family relations in the succession perspective, we see in the definition section the preference of a legal heir being male as opposed to female, which contravenes Article 21 and Article 31 of the Constitution. We see the Succession Act requiring a woman to acquire the domicile of her husband, which is still contravenes the Constitution, because ideally somebody we should be discussing domicile of choice. We see the computation of the degrees of kindredge in the Succession Act, leaving out a wife as part of the degree of kindredge when we talk about people who are envisaged as within the succession lineage. And we further see the Succession Act talking about a distribution of a male estate, and it does not mention the distribution of the distribution of female intestate estate. We see Section 43 empowering a father to appoint a statutory guardian and a statutory guardian, but with no such rights to a mother. This position has since been outlawed by the Constitutional Court in the case of Law Advocacy for Uganda, in Uganda versus Attorney General. And I must say that there is an amendment to the Succession Act that awaits attention by the position. So those are laws that we need to deal with. And it's a lot of work because law enactment, law reform takes a lot of consultations with the community, and it takes the goodwill of many people. And where there is no goodwill, we've seen a lot of beautiful laws meant for gender equality stalling. We see the Land Act coming in also to address the historical injustices occasioned along gender lines and it makes provision for the protection of women amongst the vulnerable categories. And specifically, it outlaws decisions in respect of individual and communal land holdings that deny women access to land ownership, occupational use, and it further imposes restrictions on transfer of family land without spousal consent, which is a positive. As to the actualization, that is a different process. The justice system is very hard to maneuver, and it needs a degree of empowerment, including literacy, which makes it very challenging. We have seen criminal law coming in to deal with gender relations within the domestic sphere, and we applaud this, particularly when it comes to the Domestic Violence Act that seeks to protect violence, including along gender relations within the domestic setting, and empowers people to bring, empowers the victims to a remedy. We have seen laws like the prohibition of female genital mutilation, like the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act, which outlaws harmful customary practices against women and girls, and therefore makes the perpetrators liable to prosecution, and that is a positive. We see further criminalization of abuses against women, the rape, the defilement, and even further coming down to guidelines within the institution, which is a positive of acknowledging the fact that there are evils that take place on a certain gender more prominently than others. We see a very good government move to ensure gender equality through planning and budgeting. This is one of the hottest around us, the Public Finance Management Act, that makes provisions for gender and equity budgeting in Uganda within the public sector planning and budgeting, where it's now mandatory to make provision for gender-related issues. And you know, this is a good move to ensure that we mainstream issues of gender. The Act requires all ministries, departments, and agencies of government, including local government, to address issues of gender and equity in their annual budgets. And this is really a positive move to ensure that there is a tendency to issues of gender, and in the hope that it can lead to gender equality. Although I must mention that beyond the data, statistics, we ought to give more meaningful services that are tailored towards gender equality, as the discussants will point out to us. And we see the Equal Opportunities Commission already established and coming in to implement now the Public Finance Management Act, you know, because it conducts compliance assessments on budget framework papers, on ministerial policy statements, to ensure that they are compliant with the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act, and to ensure that issues of gender and equity have been complied with. And we see that the Act further moves on to mandate Parliament to reject budgets and that do not meet the criteria set out in the Act, which is really a positive move from government, of course, subject to further analysis, as the discussant will point out to us, but also subject to review, since we have had this since 2015. We have the Uganda Gender Policy. This is not 2002, it's 2007. Sorry for that mistake. And it provides for equality between men and women. It reaffirms government's commitment to promote gender equality, and it's aimed at ensuring that all government policies and programs are consistent in eliminating gender equality. The policy establishes a framework for identification and implementation, coordination of interventions designed to achieve gender equality, which I think is a very good policy. Only that we should ensure that we get more buy-in from other government agencies' policy. We have the vision 2020. 2040, which provides the overall planning framework for Uganda. And it speaks to equality as one of the aspirations of Uganda. And it makes mention of Uganda's aspiration to unity in diversity and equal opportunity, irrespective of gender, among others. Okay, there is an interference there. The host, please. There is feedback coming in from the
Regina, kindly mute.
So we have yes, I was speaking to the Vision 2040, which actually speaks to equality as one of our aspirations as Ugandans, and aspirations to unity in diversity and equal opportunities irrespective of gender, which is a very good step because it provides a platform for the overall planning framework in Uganda. And this vision is totally aligned to the international and regional instruments that promote enjoyment of human rights for both men and women, and for the promotion of gender, gender rights. So I think Uganda has done very well in relation to establishing legal and policy frameworks that address gender equality, and particularly our constitution is very beautiful and very empowering. But the general analysis is that we need to align our laws to reflect gender, and we need to continue drumming the gospel for people to embrace gender equality as a way of respect for human rights, but also for sustainable development. We have gaps in legislation that we must address through amendments or enactments. For instance, until today, the Marriage and Divorce Bill is still pending before Parliament. The Sexual Offences Bill is still pending before Parliament. These are issues that we need to look into. But also, when we come down to the actualization platform, we realize that we have a lot of coming from economic empowerment, particularly of women, where women are not economically empowered, even access to justice becomes very challenging. So it is something that we have to analyze and find a way of economically empowering the weaker gender, but also empowering our people to empower those who cannot access their rights along gender lenses to be able to do so. And it will take a concerted effort between government working with civil society to do that. Despite all these beautiful provisions of the law, we still see gender inequity, even in the constitutional bodies and in the arms of government. As a teacher of clinical education, when I went to take students to the PPDA tribunal, I just realized that the whole membership of the PPDA tribunal is male. So we are missing out there on some elements that the female gender can bring on board. And I was like, how did this happen? I've been critically analyzing the ongoing appointments and within the various arms of government, and we still see a male domination, even with females appointed here and there if we could look at the top level. And if it doesn't happen at the top level, then it becomes very difficult to monitor the same at a much more lower level. If at all I could comment about the provision of the Constitution that speaks to gender equality within the constitutional bodies and other government institutions. So that is something that we have to weigh in and look at very carefully. If I could speak, for instance, within the justice sector, the sector I belong, we critically analyze the positioning of the judiciary as an arm of government. And for now, we can see that, for instance, the whole leadership is male, from the Chief Justice to the Deputy Chief Justice to the Principal Judge, and that tells something that we should be intentional about. And that speaks to another challenge, competitiveness and vis-a-vis gender balance, because if we are not intentional about resourcing along gender balance, we continue to have the gender equality fall through the cracks, and it's something that we should analyze very, very carefully. And if it doesn't happen on the top, then it becomes very difficult to get it on the bottom. Of course, when it comes to the women representatives of parliament, of course, other than empowering this lot of women, we need to look at the fact of how are they handling women-related issues. Of course, we see there is a real threat to the intentions of the party vis-a-vis what they should be representing in terms of this marginalized group. Is something that the discussant can go into the depth. But that said, we have a good legal and policy framework that we can use productively for gender equality. If at all we could pick up on some of the recommendations that I make here. Sorry, unfortunately, yeah, there is a missing slide here that we can use productively if we could pick up on the recommendations that I make here, which include building capacity within the MDAs, that is government ministries, departments, and agencies, and including within civil society, but also doing a bit of civic education around gender equality. We can do very well with the legal and policy framework. Pick up on the recommendations of continuous monitoring and evaluation of the legal and policy framework, but also the interventions that we take. We could do very well with the laws we have if we could pick up on the recommendation of comprehensive sensitization of cultural, traditional, religious leaders and the community at large to embrace gender equality. Members, allow me to stop here to allow the discussant say something and for the discussion, and we can look out for more comprehensive discussions within the policy briefs that have been promised by the UMI leadership, but also for the comprehensive paper that that UMI will later on share. This being just a token to ignite our conversation. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, our presenter. Now, without taking more time, let's get to the discussant. Professor Grace Bantebia is a professor at Makerere University. She has been in this field of gender studies, women's studies for quite some time. She has written, she has published, and therefore she's a well-placed person to discuss this presentation. Professor Grace Bantebia.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to discuss this important paper, a critical review of the legal and the policy framework for promotion of gender equality and rights in Uganda. Yeah, I would like to thank Lydia for the extensive review of this, the legal and policy context. This is so critical at this particular time as we we assess and understand the extent the legal and the policy framework has actually delivered the gender equality and the rights in Uganda. I would like to put a caveat that I got this draft paper last evening, and as I was listening to the presenter, definitely the presenter has made a lot of changes, and maybe made me more understand what the paper should all be about in her presentation. And because my first question was a critical review of legal and policy framework for what? I think this is very, very important. The first issue I think I would like to highlight for each of for the paper to actually make us understand what is going on is the context. Why should we even be thinking of reviewing the legal and policy framework for promotion of gender policy for gender equality at this particular time? And I think the paper is missing that in terms of really giving us a context why the need for reviewing this legal these frameworks. Because if it's just looking at them and looking at their gaps, that has already been done by a number of people, by a number of organizations to review the policies and get the gaps that are there that may not actually serve the purpose of gender equality. So the paper actually needs to give us at the very, very beginning, the background, why this review is critical at this particular time. We know right now that globally that the attainment of gender equality and rights, progress has been made in some areas, but also at the same time there is the stagnation, what we call stasis. We're not moving as much as we should be moving because of certain issues. And one would like to see in Uganda, could it be if we get this context of what is happening in Uganda now, is it because of those gaps that are already in the legal and the framework? We know now that, for instance, it will take 90 years globally to achieve gender equality. That has been established, and the recent report, a UN report on the progress after Beijing 25 years, is clearly indicating that we are retrogressing in a number of areas. And there is statistics that show that we are not achieving gender equality that we have wanted. The other issue that is coming up that actually helps us to look at this policy framework is what now is being called as patriarchal breaks. That while we have attained, and it is important that we have achieved quite a lot in some of in moving to gender equality, that there is a phenomenon that is coming up, and it is highlighted in these reports, that is actually affecting and really moving backward some of the attainments and patriarchal breaks, that the masculinity, the patriarchal system is changing. And so that leads us to ask ourselves, do the policy framework, the legal and policy framework we have, are they able to deal with the current situation or the situation that has evolved? So I would urge the presenter to really give us that context, why we should even be discussing legal and policy frameworks at this particular time, and given that many of them have been established over the years, and they have been on the books, and some of them have actually been applied. I think also in reviewing this legal framework, we need to look carefully at the issue that has emerged over the years, the issue of intersectionality, because sometimes when we talk about gender equality, we are so broad, and yet we know that to achieve it, we need to take into account the different context of the women and men. in terms of age, in terms of economy, in terms of even religion. This has come out as a major issue because we have generally been talking generally gender equality, and we realize that there are certain groups of people that we need to be talking about. So that is also one point that is really strong for us to review this legal and policy framework in promoting gender equality, because gender equality as a concept is so huge and rights. And many times one would like to see it really broken down in exactly what is going on, what the legal and the policy framework says. And I'm glad Lydia, in her presentation, she's been unpacking what is provided and what is not provided and what needs to do. The last point on the context, which really gives us a very strong backing for reviewing these processes now, is that gender is no longer men and women, and that we should move away very quickly and begin to look at gender as more of a system that is institutionalized and is structuring the way gender relations are being performed and they are actualized. And this is so critical that possibly our legal and the policy framework have not moved of understanding that it is more institutionalized, and it's just normalizing a number of things. And this is explaining why we see a lot of not realizing what we have planned for. For the international report to say we shall take 90 years from now to achieve gender equality, then there is an issue we must be examining. So that is on the part of the introduction, and that would really give us a very big, good context why we should be reviewing. And there's good data on Uganda where we have moved and so on. This week, actually, we are attending an international meeting on gender, and all the presentations from different countries show that we are actually stagnating and that we are moving backwards in terms of realizing some of these things. And in Uganda, UBOS has produced data on quite a number of the indicators on gender equality, time use, unpaid care work, education. While we have attained some levels of education in primary and secondary, we are finding ourselves that one point, because of teenage pregnancy, that is stepping on our mission for having education for all. So there is statistics that show the situation in Uganda, and that demands why we should look carefully at the legal and review what is there, and if it will actually deliver what we're experiencing right now. So that is my first point about that. And that could be given in the more also in the rationale for this paper. I know the paper has also given us the rationale for gender and policy framework, which she builds in the exclusive and gender development and sustainable development, which is really brilliant. And I think she says she's going to write about it. What I have is they're just bullet points, but I think that is very important. And one of the issues that we really have to focus on ensuring that no one is left behind. And nowadays we don't even say no one is left behind, but farthest behind, because there are people who are completely out of the system and they are important, and we must look for them and target them. So I think that is good to give a rationale for that. And another rationale could be really that progress is so uneven and yet the frameworks have not actually maybe delivered what we want, or they have delivered in some aspects, and we need to critically examine where they can be improved and so on. And I love also the improved observance of rule of law. That is really very important, and Lydia explained that in her presentation. Well, so that is good, and gives us a basis of looking of examining this legal and policy framework, and not any other institution or not any other thing, because this is the bedrock of that really informs, and that that informs the programming, that informs the monitoring and so on. So it's so critical. In the paper, we also see, and also in the presentation, we also see the clear description of all the frameworks, the international frameworks that are covered clearly. I don't even have to go through them because she explained them so well, what has been in place. But I would also urge Lydia that to look at more recent frameworks that have evolved after Beijing that are supporting national governments to ensure the rights and promotion of gender equality. She also presents very well the legal framework on gender, and SOMA and very many. She also presents, I don't want to repeat it because she did a great job, also giving the national legal framework on the gender equality and what the gaps are, and what could be done. It talks about the national development plan. I think this is well done, but for when we talk about gender, especially gender equality, it is an intersectional area that even if we're talking about the legal and policy, so they are much more, almost all the sectoral policies impact on it. So we need a section in this paper where we bring that intersectionality and see an intersectoral perspective that actually influence the delivery of gender equality. Right now, I've been in a meeting since morning at 7, where we were discussing sexual and reproductive health. And then we said that the Ministry of Education, came up with a comprehensive sexuality education. And there they specify, the key holders, the stakeholders, the duty bearers, and so on, and what should be done. And then the Ministry of Gender also has just produced the parenting guidelines. And then there's a conflict and a controversy between the two documents. And then that becomes very critical for analysis and seeing how, and then the implementers are left in the gap on how to actually implement the two maybe diverse policy statements or views. So that's how the realization and attainment of gender equality may be actually problematic, because now we still see in very big numbers of adolescent pregnancy, child marriages are still unvetted, because there are also controversies and contestations in the policy environment itself and in the interpretation, the legal requirements and the legal implications of these very many instruments that have actually presented a context for us to deliver gender equality and rights. So this is a section I would really urge the presenter to include, because it is important that we move gender broadly from just women and men, but more on the system that needs to work together and intersect with each other, so that we deliver, because gender equality is not going to be delivered by just the laws and policy relating to gender, but also others that are in the same area that impact on people's lives. We have also been this, the whole women's empowerment issues, and as you were discussing, and the whole men engagement issues, increasingly, although we don't have a lot of policies, but now the Ministry of Gender has come with a male engagement strategy. This is a policy you should not talk about, framework, not talk about in this paper, because it comes at the realization that gender equality attainment cannot be done without the holistic approach to well-being, to livelihoods, and which should engage everybody, including men, and men as active agents.
and harnessing on positive masculinity, although there is a legal guidance and a framework that has been provided, but we must also weave in this existing legal in order to understand and actually to achieve. And in the paper, you also rightly talk about the challenges, especially regarding the issue of the passage of marriage and divorce bill and sex offences bill, and that undermine the spirit of the Constitution of Uganda. And also you talk about the other barriers. I like some of the point, although it's not yet written out. I think in this section, rather than maybe calling it challenges, I think we should now be moving to a point of saying of putting together what can be consolidated and the sort of the gaps that needs to be filled and under what context. So that at the end of the day, we see there's a situation, we are reviewing the policies and the framework, we are seeing the gaps in these frameworks, and rightly you are giving examples which you haven't written here, but I think that's when you're presenting, you mentioned them. So that at the end of the day, we see a gap, and then instead of recommendation, we should be seeing actually policy guidance. Where can we change or revise, or even is there a need for new policies, like for new policies.
Discuss and you should
so
summarize.
I've actually finished, and I'm just saying the recommendations should really be around the changes around the policy environment, but also, this capacity building has been done so many times, and we need new strategies to do that so that the application is actually realized. So otherwise, thank you very much for that paper, and looking forward to seeing a full paper, and maybe fully written out than what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Bantevia, for that discussion of the presentation. Now, I would like to request that we move on to the Honorable Minister so that she gives her remarks, and thereafter we shall use the time which will be left for the plenary discussion and also for the closing remarks. May I request now the Honorable Minister to give her remarks. Honorable Minister.
Thank you so much, Professor Muyinda Mandi, and Professor Bantevia, and the presenter, Lydia Namuli, the chairman of Uganda Policy Development Management Forum. I hope I'm being heard. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you are. We are hearing you.
Yes, we can hear, Honorable. Thank you so much. The chairman, Uganda Policy Development Management Forum, the Director General, Uganda Management Institute, representatives from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, members of the civil society organizations. Today's presenter, Professor Lydia Namuli, the academic staff and participants of UMI, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking you for choosing me to participate in this very important policy dialogue. And as government of Uganda, we highly appreciate the efforts to facilitate research-based policy formulation, because our emphasis is on the evidence and use of credible evidence to inform decision-making. Therefore, on behalf of government of Uganda and the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development in particular, I wish to thank Uganda Policy Development Management Forum at the Uganda Management Institute for the invitation to mobilize these regular interactions between the academia, the technocrats, and the general public to jointly validate today's critical review of current policy framework for gender equality and rights. I am convinced that the integration of the ideas from the global knowledge accumulated over the years by academicians in this vital room, the experiences of the technocrats from many ministries, from my ministry, and the expressed interests of the public participating in this dialogue makes the required combination for the formulation of the relevant policy sensitive to public interest and compliant with professional universal practices. I'm particularly happy that the forum recognizes gender equality and rights as an important component of national development. Actually, the involvement of both men and women at an equal level is a game changer to all the social development challenges or gaps we have right now. I wish to appreciate the researcher who is going on and has already presented for the investment of her time in conducting a study that challenges the current policy regime regarding gender equality and rights. I am sure that you have very interesting suggestions that laws and policymakers and implementers need to consider as they formulate, implement, and evaluate laws, policies, and development programs in Uganda. I have taken time to listen in, and I feel challenged myself, and I'm sure everybody else that is implementing, that is researching, that has listened in, has felt the same challenge. In addition, I'd like to appreciate all of you for your participation in the online dialogue. I know that it takes much commitment and flexibility to participate in the online activities, but I'd also like to emphasize that with the emerging digital transformation, we have no choice but to embrace working online. There is some bit of interference, but I can continue. That we have no choice but to embrace working online and its associated dynamics of the new world order following the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's dialogue is anchored on the theme, review of the policy framework for promotion of gender equality and rights in Uganda. I'd like to acknowledge the effort of the government of Uganda on the adoption and domestication of several international and regional commitments on human rights, gender equality, and women's empowerment. As law and policymakers and implementers, we are encouraged to get independent and objective assessment on the extent to which Uganda benefits from all these interventions undertaken by the government of Uganda. We appreciate the efforts of policy researchers that dig deep into the public to extract their feelings towards the services rendered by the sector. Research also helps us to identify emerging issues that have previously not been identified for interventions. I'm happy to learn more from the presentation by the researcher and the discussant on areas of improvement in policy framework that we can work on as a sector and we can certainly do better together. I also wish to invite you, the discussant, to join with us in the context of policy brief as at an agreed date, so that we revise avenues of taking action on some of the recommendations. And I'm happy the way Professor Bantebia put it. Instead of calling them recommendations, we are going to call them policy guidance, so that we see how suitable they can be improved on in the policy framework moving forward. Luckily, many of the gender policies and laws have almost hit 10 years and are in the process of review. So it is really timely for us to put heads together with all the researchers that have engaged into digging deep into the policy analysis, so that their efforts can be factored into the review process. It is pleasant to realize that UMI has recognized the importance of research in improving quality of work, especially services around emphasis of gender equality and rights, where knowledge or awareness of these concepts remain minimal, especially in the rural areas where majority of our people live. Your engagement of the Cabinet Secretariat is also evidence that the government appreciates the scientific positions of scholars and is willing to make use of scientific evidence now than ever before. I am sure that your presentation will go a long way to supplement the knowledge that the government has gathered around gender equality and rights, and our technocrats will be there to guide and advise on the practicability of the recommendations or guidance from this research. I'd also like to appreciate the partnership between Uganda Management Institute and my ministry, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, Uganda Policy Development Management Forum, in promoting the spirit of evidence-based policy formulation through scientifically tested data to inform policy decisions. This is a step in the right direction, considering the global expectations that are evidence from credible research studies is utilized for bettering policy across sectors, which will result in widespread conversation. I'd like to appreciate Uganda Management Institute for endeavoring to align your programs to international studies, to international standards in the area of policy support to government. I am made to understand that UMI was awarded an ISO certificate shortly before the pandemic, and that is the first institution of higher learning in Uganda to obtain it. And I wish to congratulate you upon that achievement. Institutions like UMI are the cradle of public policy, and I'm happy that we can now count on UMI to regularly study policies across government and generate useful information to improve government policy. I'm optimistic that participants on this forum will generate useful input for improvement of approaches for achievement of gender equality and advocacy for women, men, children to coexist in supportive environment at home, at work, and schools. I wish to call upon the academia to conduct research studies and publish works to enlighten the population. As a government, we are very proud of the work you are doing to address national issues, and will be very happy to see this work published in high impact journals where your knowledge and the flight of our nation will be globally recognized through your efforts. I'd like to note that as COVID-19 pandemic rages on, the social development sector is grappling with seemingly increasing numbers of cases of domestic violence and increasing violations due to a number of issues. I'd like to end by once again thanking the management of Uganda Management Institute for sticking to quality and supporting government through regular public policy dialogue and contribute to the policy formulation process. I would also urge members here to continue with observations of the SOPs wherever you are, so that we may return to our offices as soon as possible. And as you know, this can only be achieved if we comply with the Ministry of Health's SOPs. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, has been leading the response to COVID-19 ever since its advent, and we need to support him because his efforts is in our interests. I look forward to an outline of what you have called consultation for public governance and the recommendations or guidance so that they are studied further for adoption. As government, we pledge to continue working with you with the hope of furthering research studies, not only in the areas covered today, but also in other public areas. The technical team, led by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of General Government, will closely follow to ensure continuity of communication and engagement with the sectors that have been responsible for organizing this forum, especially UMI and Uganda Policy Development Management Forum, in designing of any product like policy briefs that will be needed to raise this research to another level.
Doing what? I'm in class.
I continue to encourage people during this lockdown to engage in academics, science, and research. This is the way to go, and that is a productive way of maintaining ourselves under arrangement, but productively. I'm already engaged in one. And I want to encourage as many, especially the political leaders, to engage themselves in research or studies of sciences, such that if the lockdown does not really lock us in the homes, but unlocks the brains to think wider and further. I want to thank you for this invitation and encourage many more interactions and dialogues in this direction for God and my country. Have a blessed day, and thank everybody that was able to attend to this forum and all the participants herein. Good day.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And after hearing the remarks of the Honorable Minister, for which we are very grateful, I would like to now turn to some of the issues that have been raised in the chat. And maybe before we start on that, I would like to request all members who have comments, questions, please put them in the chat so that they can receive them later. Otherwise, we don't have much time. I only have 4 questions from the chat, which I would like the presenter and the discussant to respond to in the next 5 minutes. And after that, we shall have the closing at in the remaining 5 minutes. So the first question is that please show the relationship between equal opportunities and gender. Maybe we'll go one by one. So that is the first question. please show the relationship between equal opportunities and gender. I don't know whether it is the presenter or the discussant would like to address that question. Presenter?
Thank you, Professor Wilson. I think, Professor, the question is still vague. The relationship between equal opportunities and gender. Okay. If I could attempt to answer it, even then, as I mentioned, we've already defined gender as a reference to the male and female relations. Equal opportunities is a bit broad. Equal opportunities is about availing opportunities to not only even the gender race, it goes to another category of many other people who are either disempowered by geographical location, by physical challenges, and many others. So gender is one component. Equal opportunities is more or less a term and an approach and a strategy. So with equal opportunities, we can deal with some of the gender inequalities and some of the gender issues. But broadly said, equal opportunities is a strategy. It is a response, it's an approach, and it not only applies to the aspect of gender, but it could apply to many other aspects. So how to show the relationship between gender and equal opportunities? We can respond to gender inequality through availing equal opportunities in many aspects. It could be in the social sphere, it could be in the economic sphere, it could be in the political sphere. Thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you've touched also on the second question. Now, the third one says that since focus is on people and family is the foundation, is it possible to look at gender relationship of a family framework for better impact? I can repeat, since focus is on people and family is the foundation, is it possible to look at gender relationships of a family framework for better impact? But I hope you've got what it is, what somebody is looking at.
Professor, is that for me?
I can make a comment on that.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
I
please.
think the other question, when we talk about gender relations, we are talking about a system that has defines the situation, position, entitlements, work, and so on for women and men. It's a system that differentiates the two groups and labels and practices that relating to each groups, and so these practices and expectations and positions are actually affected or even sensitized or at the family level. At the family level, in gender, we say is one of the foundational institutions that actually where people are brought up and sensitized and nurtured in who the men are and who the woman is, what is expected of you, what are you entitled to, what are the beliefs around being a woman, what are beliefs about masculinity, about being a man, and all those definitions. So yes, it is important, and we really need to really pay more attention at the family level, because it is the foundational institutions before we move to the community, to the state, and other institutions of gender that keep recreating and redefining gender inequalities in terms of the position of women. And I guess this is why the Ministry of Gender has come up with a number of these policies or guidelines, like parenting and others, community mobilization, also men engagement, because all of them actually have their foundation from their family. So you are it's very right. And for a long time, statistics have really been focused broadly on a home, on a family. But now in gender, we argue that that within the home, we need to understand what is going on within the homes, the internal mechanism of the family, of individuals, because we find even within one home, there are inequalities and injustices that are never captured by the big data sets. So that's my comment about that issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the last one is it possible to promote all affirmative actions of gender, older persons, special abilities, children, etc., under equal opportunities as one framework to avoid silo mentality and enhance synergies? May I repeat that? That is it possible to promote all the affirmative actions of gender, older persons, special abilities, children, etc., under equal opportunities as one framework to avoid silo mentality and enhance synergies? That is the last question.
I thought the equal opportunities does that. And that's why I think it was established. But and this is why even in my presentation I raised the whole issue of intersectionality, because here someone is mentioning gender, but then he is mentioning youth, because youth, then the older persons, those are the categories, because all those people are actually impacted on by the gender relations. So gender itself is much more broader than the specific categories of people that we're mentioning. And I think the equal opportunities has its foundation of really based on the inequalities that have broadly been defined by the gender system, belief system. So the elderly, the young people, people with disabilities, people, marginalized groups, tribal groups, who are marginalized and not considered, all those groups. And I think the equal opportunities, that is the spirit behind it. And I do totally agree. This addressing things in silos is not being helpful. And right now, this is why the discussion is on transformation, transformational approaches that actually not only look at one issue, but a multiple of interventions based on the age, based on the region, based on the education, based on income, to make a holistic approach to addressing this. And this is the job of equal opportunities and the respective ministries.
Okay, thank you very much.
To add something. Professor, I wanted to add something.
Yes, no, Minister.
We're coming to the end of the discussion. Like I said at the beginning, today we may not have chance to have everyone interact because it was a connected discussion, and we wanted to be out of here at exactly 11. And we have only 1 minute to 11. I would like to thank everyone who has been part of the discussion. There's a lot of discussion that has been going on in the chat section. And I hope we can continue with the discussion. Please stop putting your numbers and names in the chat section. That's a public space and it's not good for your own details. Imagine your number, your name, your email, everything there. People are going to start calling you. That's how fraudsters pick information. So moving forward, don't do that. Once you enter this meeting, your details have been captured, your name, your phone number. There's no way you can be on the meeting without submitting those details. So, like I'd communicated to some people, we need to start having our own discussions next week. And I'd asked people to provide topics. You can send on my email so that we prepare in time on people to invite and experienced people in particular areas. I've realized there's a lot of information we need to have on gender-based violation of human rights. like looking at the FGM. It's a very sensitive topic because it's a cultural practice for some, and some people see it as violation of their cultural practices. I think we need to discuss this. Have people who have gone through the experience, sharing their experience. We have people who probably are pro and anti the practice, and we have a discussion. Someone says even circumcision. Yes, we can have that. But I'm going to organize, I think, next week, most preferably on Friday. We shall have a discussion on FGM. If you have any information or someone you would love to be on the platform, you can email me and we'll find a way of reaching out. I've liked the discussion in the chat section. People have followed very well. And yeah, we're going to end this meeting. I don't know whether I'm seeing Honorable David Pukol is online. Do you want to say something before I close?
I want to say something before you close. First of all, let me greet all the members in the room. Members,
okay.
I'm Nathan. I want to say something before you close.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm grateful you have brought the issue of us sharing topics so that to continue having this thing on move. I'm looking at, may you share your email? You share your email to the chat so that when there's a topic, we send to you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put my email in the chat section before I close. Yes, I was asking if Honorable David Boko wanted to say something to the people who have been part of the session. Before I close, is the Executive Director of Africa Leadership Institute. Just a second.
Marvin?
Yes, sir. You can go ahead. We have people who have been part of the policy dialogue from the start.
Yes.
Maybe if you could give some closing remarks. I don't know whether you've been following from here or the other side.
No, I've been following from here, although on and off. We are happy that you have been part of this policy dialogue. And it's something that we are learning how to share with all of you instead of only a few who connect through the UMI portal. So we are happy that you registered and you participated. Issues of gender, as you see, are very, very pertinent issues. I've not been able to raise these issues. Am I being heard?
Yes, yes.
And am I being heard also by those in the UMI portal?
No, you're on the AFLI portal.
AFLI portal.
And YouTube.
Portal and YouTube. So I'm saying that issues of gender parity, our constitution says at least in all leadership positions, women should be at least 30%. I don't know whether it's at the local councils or what, but we are happy that our president has elevated those in cabinet to 46%. But is it a once-off or is it going to be from now on? Of course, the preference would have been 50-50. And I think the women movement has been agitating for 50-50 parity. So it is important that we add our voice because women are 51% of the population. So how can they get, but the minimum was 30%. But I think we've come a long way. And you find that women are more in the councils, very few in the executive of the district, very few in the executive of the sub-county local governments. Now, again, when you come to parliament also, they are more increasing in numbers in parliament, but they were significantly less. They were always 30-something% in cabinet. Now, this time they have gone to 46%. So again, in the 11th parliament, in the 10th parliament, women were 33% of all the leadership positions in parliament. That's on a 10th. So let's watch and see whether the numbers are going to increase, meaning to be a chairman and a vice chair of the committees, and therefore even in the parliamentary commission and so forth. So we hope the 11th Parliament will do better to increase the participation of our female, our sisters and our daughters, our wives, our female citizens will increase their number up so that this power we share in decision making, not only in adding numbers in the backbenchers. We also need to monitor the opposition cabinet, the shadow cabinet, and see whether the political parties also reflect this. So we need to adapt this trend. Like in AFLI, it's always been 50-50. And sometimes 49%, sometimes, so we're very, very sensitive on matters like this. Even now in our Yumbe office, we've had to correct the imbalance of those who were manning the secretariat. So what am I saying? I am saying that yes, numbers must come to parity, but impact is where the challenge is. So we look at our female citizens from the eyes of our mothers. There is something they have which we men don't have. We don't know what God did when he made us to sleep. He put something very unique in women. Women think 360 degrees. This is my experience. For us men, we think linear, 180 degrees. So women have a capacity beyond what men have. Even in there, you see now they're here now. There's a capacity for multitasking. Men have to finish one thing first before they go to the next and so forth. It's linear. But how are we recognizing this? And even at the family level, you find a mother cannot sleep when a child is sick. They stay the whole night awake. They go to the extra mile, look for medication to make sure the child recovers. A mother is a mother. It is something unique which you don't see in men. And even they can't eat food unless all the children are eaten. So how is Uganda harnessing the motherhood, this unique, this innate, this biological, in the biological constitution of women? How are we harnessing this in the policy arena? So, and also for women, when they come to the public space, do they leave motherhood somewhere? And how come we are not seeing these reflected when they become the Minister of Health, when they become the Minister of Agriculture, when they become the Prime Minister, when they become the Vice President? So what is in the public space which makes women who end up there not to carry the motherhood in them, the femininity in them, the unique abilities and capabilities that where they perform better than us men? How come some of them also join corruption? So it looks like corruption has got a bright future in Uganda, because when it was only men who were dominant in the public space in terms of numbers of those involved in corruption, but now that youth have come in their big numbers into public place, into public policy, into leadership positions, and now more women have come into policy decisions, it looks like they are being co-opted to turn the wheel in the same direction it has been moving. So have women who are dying out of child labor reduced completely now that more women are in positions of leadership? Or it is still going as though there are no women in leadership? It's still high. Is child abuse, molestation, is gender-based violence reducing, or it is increasing? It is. So where are these women citizens making impact? It's not about numbers. So the issue then is, does Uganda move from numbers to impact? What else do we need to do together to make sure that Uganda harnesses and benefits from the increase of these unique abilities that women have to make the well-being of citizens much better? So the debate is ending, the policy forum is ending, but the debate is on. So continue giving us your suggestions, how we are going to benefit from give us suggestions how this is going to progress. I'm saying somebody may be thinking that I am being biased in favor of women, but many years of practice, and this is what I have come to conclusion that in terms of planning, you find when you are thinking here, women are already thinking ahead, okay? And they have already taken care of those contingencies. And you say, but when did you think about this? Oh, no. So you just have to give it to them. But we also have to be careful because you know that, yes, they were made when we were asleep. We don't know exactly what happened. So we don't understand them much. But I think let's try to understand them more. And also, you know that they are the ones who came face to face with the devil in the garden. I don't think a man came face to face. So you have to be careful how you handle them, because people who have faced the devil, you know, and face to face and have conversed, so if you disappoint them, they can disappoint you more. So, and I'm saying women look at the simple thing you give, just a few groceries, and you already have a nice meal. Just like you give a house and you have a home. They have abilities that some of us don't have. You give her just a sperm and she gives you good bouncing babies, you know? It's just amazing. So for them, they are multipliers. So how is Uganda benefiting from these unique abilities of our female folk? How is Uganda society lifting up the women folk? But at the same time, families, the mothers have spent more time with the girl child. The fathers are not spending the same amount of time with the boy child. Now, you have a mismatch where girls are being well groomed to be the best mother, to be the best wife, to be the best daughter. But the same amount of grooming is not taking place in the boy child. Even at the national level, more attention is moved to the girl child. Even in policy making, more attention is moving to the girl child. So it's indeed about time that we should also put emphasis now on the boy child, because you are now having very good, wonderful women, but they don't have wonderful men to marry who have been well groomed. So the women are being prepared for a certain fantastic role, but the young men are not adequately being prepared for that good woman. So there's a challenge in our society today, and marriages are breaking, and young men are fearing to enter into relationships, fearing to take responsibility, and you find there's more confidence among girls. These days, there's better performance in the workplace, in the school, and so forth. So we need them to balance the boy child. Is it about time to have a ministry for men's affairs? Sorry, I'm just teasing you. I'm just being controversial here. But shouldn't the same attention that we're giving the girl child now also move to the boy child at the household level, at the government, at local government level, at national level? So the debate is on. I'm just throwing these issues out there, and to spur the debate. And thanking all of you. And let's. I think the debate is on two things. What do we need I think we need two things. One, mutual respect. Two, mutual support. Must be mutual. So is that too much to ask of any of us, that we mutually respect each other? Men and women should mutually respect each other at the workplace, at the household level, at the government level, at the NGO level, in whatever we are doing, to mutually respect each other and be courteous with each other. Two, mutual support. If we support each other, Uganda will win. When Ugandans have been together, we always win. So how do we pursue these issues in a way that respects and also that enables us to support each other? Then Uganda will be, then together we'll be winners. So thank you very much. The debate is on. It has not ended. Post your views. And after this debate, AFLI, together with UMI, will take these views and we are going to come up with a policy brief. If you go to our websites, you'll find the policy briefs in the last quarters. Or if you go to MP Scan, you can download those policy briefs. But also out of this will come a policy brief, which will have reviewed the gender legal and policy framework. And then we'll be making certain recommendations, okay, to be adopted. And this policy brief will go back to Parliament, will go back to Cabinet. So thank you very much for participating. And thank you very much for being part of us. And may God bless you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, EG. I'm going to conclude. Don't forget, the debate is still on our MP Scan. You can go and engage. I've dropped the link. I've also shared my email for those who want to share topics and other suggestions. I'm planning for us to have a discussion next week. We could decide on the topic along the way. But otherwise, thank you very much. And the meeting is adjourned. See you all. Oh, you can say bye. All of you have been quiet the whole day. So
Bye-bye.
You can unmute and say bye.
Bye.
For your camera so that we take a screenshot.
We'll also enable your videos and we take a screenshot.
So that we take a screenshot.
Yeah, next week.
Enable your videos. I'd forgotten.
Yeah,
This is
enable your
the
videos.
Zoom selfie.
So that we take a Zoom selfie.
Please enable your videos. So I'm taking the selfie now.
Taking the selfie. Lillian, you're not putting yours on. Nagaba, you're Susan, you're
Yes.
not putting your camera. So who?
Jonathan.
Julie, yes. Julie.
Okay, I've taken.
You've taken.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye, all of you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.